Good afternoon, everyone. This is Sierra Wolf, Associate Editor for Farm Equipment Magazine. Welcome to our latest webinar in conjunction with the Western Equipment Dealers Association. Today's presenter is Kelly Matheson. Kelly has almost 30 years experience in the agricultural equipment industry. Over the years, he gained experience as a sales manager, aftermarket manager, general manager, and group marketing manager. In 2014, Kelly launched a consulting and training company, Kaizen Management, and in 2015, joined Western Equipment Dealers Association's Dealer Institute as a consultant trainer. Before Kelly gets his presentation started, I have a couple housekeeping items. On your screen, there's a control panel with a Q&A icon. You can submit questions here at any time during the presentation. Time permitting, we will look to answer as many questions as possible following the presentation. If for any reason your internet connection or even our connection should happen to fail at some point and it looks like the webinar has been interrupted, just go back to the email you received earlier telling you how to join the webinar and you can re-enter that way. Okay, we're ready to get started. Thanks again for joining us. Take it away, Kelly.
Great, well thanks, thanks very much, Sierra, and thanks again to Farm Equipment Magazine for providing this format and the platform for these webinars. They're very informative and you do a great job, so thank you. I'd also like to send a shout out to the Western Equipment Dealers Association for sponsoring today's webinar. And of course, thanks to everyone for attending. I know we've got a lot of people that are going into harvest or in the middle of harvest. So it's a very busy time of year, so we'll try and keep this presentation upbeat and going so you can get back to work looking after customers. So today we're going to talk about the impacts and alternatives to parts discounting. And so a little bit of an overview. Of course, there's some very obvious things. We know customers quite often want a deal, right? And it happens whether they're wanting a discount or whether they want some sort of special treatment, right? And we know this happens every day in most dealerships across North America. So customers are quite often asking for discounts and quite often they get them. The other thing that is quite obvious is that it's most often the frontline counter people that are involved, whether it's frontline parts people or frontline service people. Quite often that's where the question gets asked. It isn't always in the owner's or the manager's desk. So you're right in the firing line trying to decide whether you should be giving a discount or how you should respond to a customer. So in today's webinar, we're going to first of all just talk about understanding the impact that discounting has on your dealership's profitability. So the dollars and cents behind just giving a customer a discount or a deal. We're also going to talk about defining what's a good discount and a bad discount. So we're going to spend a little bit of time on because not all discounting is a bad thing. So we want to make sure we spend some time on that. We're going to share some alternatives, maybe plant some ideas on how you can handle those situations or how you can be more proactive around discountings and keep customers happy or feeling that they're being treated specially. Without just saying yes to every request, and some ideas to make it easier for your parts people to deal with these requests at the counter. So we're going to share some ideas around that. So first of all, let's just talk about financial impact of discounting. So to understand this, we really need to understand how much wiggle room you have when you're giving a discount. So this is a very basic formula, but it's a good way to explain it to your frontline parts people. First of all, we need to understand the gross margins that are made in a typical parts department. So how you calculate gross margin dollars, it's a sale price, whatever you're selling that part for, minus what the cost of that part was, or any direct cost to it. So in some cases, it might be special freight that's tied to the direct cost of that part, or the price that you pay to your supplier for that part. So let's just use, for an example, we have a sale price of a part for $80, and the cost of that part is $56. So in that case, our gross margin is the difference of those two. You take the sale price minus the cost of sale. We've got a gross margin dollars of 24%. Now, a lot of dealerships say, well, we quite often talk in percentages, gross margin percent. So how do you calculate that? Well, gross margin percent is calculated by taking those gross margin dollars and dividing them by that sale price. So in our example, you take $24, which was our gross margin dollars, divide it by the $80 sale price, and you've got a gross margin of 30%. But one thing you really need to drive home to your people is percentages don't pay the bills, dollars do. So when you might be thinking, well, that's pretty good, we made $24 on that part, but we've got all the bills to pay. Once we take that $24 in gross margin, we've got the heat, the light, the taxes, parts people's wages. There's a lot of expenses that have to be covered with that gross margin dollars. Now, just to put that into perspective, our cost of doing business survey that WEDA does annually shows that the average North American dealership parts department have expenses as a percentage of their sales somewhere in that 14 to 18%. So in simple math, if you're making a 30% gross margin and you've got expenses of 14 to 18%, you've got a net left of around 12 to 16. However, there's some assumptions there. Doesn't sound too bad, does it? But this is assuming that you're selling every single part in your inventory at 30% margin, and you're always recovering the freight, special freight, and you have no surprises or leftover stock at the end of the year or obsolete parts. And we know that that's a reality. We know that we don't always recover all our special freight. We know we have dead stock. We know we have discounting, and we also have surprises where we may be making a mistake in pricing. So I think we can agree that although 12 to 16% net in your parts department would be nice, that isn't very often the case. And so margins are very tight. So let's just have a look at this net example. So we decide to do some discounting. So the sale price of the part is 80, cost is 56, or make it 24. However, customer says, come on, can you do better? I'm a good customer, give me a deal. How about knocking 10% off? So you take 10% off of that $80 and you sell it to them for 72. The cost of the part doesn't change. So now your gross margin is only 16. So you have only $8 left to pay the bills. Where before, instead of, now you only have you only have $16 left rather than 24 to pay those bills. So it has a huge impact and on discounting. Now, we also talked about this. I wanted to clarify, when I talk about expenses of the parts department, that isn't including the expenses of the overall dealership. And parts department is also responsible for paying a portion of the overall expenses of the dealership. So your other absorption also falls a lot on the shoulders of the parts department. So you have to make sure that you have to understand when you discount, that has an impact on being able to pay those bills as well. So in this case, we're left, instead of a 30% margin, we're left with a 22% gross margin. Now, here's another way of looking at it. Let's assume you're maintaining 30% gross margin on a part, okay? And here's the question. How many more of that part do you need to sell to maintain the same gross margin or same gross profit dollars if you apply a discount to it? So let's use an example. You're selling 10 of a certain part and you're always making 30% on them. And then you think, gee whiz, maybe we should discount these parts. Let's give a 10% discount on all these parts and see how many more we can sell. Well, the question is, how many more do you have to sell to bring in the same dollars? This chart is a good way to explain it. So if you follow up here, if you discount by 5, 10, or 15%, and your current margin on that part is 25, 30, or 35, so let's just use the example that your current margin is 30%, and you discount by 10%, you need to sell 50% more of those parts. So again, if you're selling 30 widgets at 30% margin and then you decide to discount, this is wrong. If you decide to discount by 10%, you'll need to sell 15 more, or a total of 25, to drive those same margin dollars. So if you ask a parts person, what's easier? Should we try and hold our margins, or should we try and sell, half as much, or 50% more? They're going to say, well, that's a lot harder to sell way more parts. Especially if we're giving discounts right at the counter. Here's another little example, and I show this slide because it always, a lot of people look at this calculation, and never really get their head around it. And it happens all the time in the dealership, not only in parts, but in service and in whole goods. So this is a really good slide to show your people, especially if you're dealing in a situation where you have a supplier that gives you just a cost of a part and doesn't give you a retail price or a suggested retail price. So the difference between markup and margin. So in a markup situation, you take the parts cost times a percent. Okay, so let's assume we have a parts cost of $50 and we want to mark it up by 30%. That means you have, so you take $50 times 30%, that gives you $15 gross margin. So you add that $15 onto the cost of 50, and you have a sale price of 65. However, remember how we calculate gross margin percent? We take the sale price, the gross margin dollars, and divide it by the sale price. So if anybody have your calculators out, take the gross margin dollars, which in this case is 15, divide it by 65, and we've really only made 23% gross margin percent. Which a lot of people say, well, that's crazy. Maybe people have even said to me in classrooms that must be Canadian math, not US math, because if I mark it up by 30, how come I'm not making 30%? Well, this is really the difference between markup versus margin. So if you want to do a margin calculation, so if your example is we need to make a 30% gross margin, you take the parts cost and you divide it by 0.7 or 0.70. So in this case, $50 divided by 0.70, now you have a sale price of $71.43, a gross margin of $21.43. And to get our gross margin percent, you take your gross margin dollars, divide it by your sale price, and you're at 30%. Now, I'm going to share a quick story here. I was doing a session with a bunch of dealers, and one of the parts aftermarket managers was telling me that they do a high volume with a major short line supplier, and they were able to negotiate a better price because they do such a high volume with this supplier, and so they lowered their cost to this supplier. However, they were putting a markup of 30% instead of a gross margin target of 30%. And I said, oh, so he said, yeah, and that's why we're not hitting our margin targets. We're never hitting them because we were doing this calculation wrong. And I said, well, that's great that you learned this. You should be able to share it. And he said, well, that's not the worst part. He said, most of the time, because our parts managers and parts people think that we're buying better, when a customer asks for a 10% discount, we were usually giving it to them, which is really scary. So not only were they not making the proper margin, but then they were discounting on top of that. So they had a huge impact. And it was all around this miscalculation of margin dollars. So I share that with you just as an example. So let's look at what I call or we quite often define as bad discounts. Okay. So if you think about this, if you went into a retail store like a hardware or a grocery store, you don't fill up your shopping cart and then go to the cashier and say, hey, give me a deal on this. But you quite often might walk around that same store and see a special on a certain item or a discount bin or what have you. You think, oh, I didn't come shopping for that particular item, but that's some pretty good prices. I think I'll pick some of those up today. We really need to be thinking of our parts department in similar ways. So here's a reason a lot of people are some things that we call bad discounts, because we've always done it. We hear this a lot. Well, old Joe comes in and he picks some parts and he's been a good guy to us and we always give him a discount. Well, how much volume is he doing? Is he, why are we giving that discount? That's not a good enough reason. Or just because the customer asked. Quite often we see that where parts people say, well, I don't know what to say. So when he asks, I just kind of give him the discount, right? So it's not a good reason to discount. Here's a tough one. I put a little asterisk beside this: to match competitors. Now, I know some organizations will say, if they'll actually advertise, say, if you find a price that's better, we'll match it. And that's not a bad strategy. However, we got to be very careful because I think in this day and age, people are able to compare prices. And sometimes you don't get that opportunity. So we're always consulting our dealers, If you know you're not competitive on a part and it's exactly the same part as being sold somewhere else, or any item really, then fix your price. Because what you're telling the customer is, if he doesn't ask for a deal, you won't give it to him. But if he does ask, or she does ask, you're going to give them a discount, which isn't really a good way to run a business. You should say, we're competitive. And in some cases, it forces you to say, well, is it exactly the same part? Is it exactly the same item that you're seeing at a lower price somewhere else? So I put that in the bad discount category. And here's the other one: is discounts are often given at the parts counter because the parts people aren't well trained. And I use that example of they aren't necessarily able to know that the comparison that the customer is making on a lower priced item is exactly the same. Maybe it's lower quality, or it's a discontinued item, or it doesn't quite fit right, or it doesn't meet all the specifications. And if you just drop your price, you're admitting, we're selling maybe a higher quality part. Now we're just giving a deal. So you got to make sure your parts people are given the ammunition that they can compete. Now, on the other hand, discounting can be a very effective tool for marketing and selling more parts, right? And this comes in as pre-planned specials. So maybe you've got too many, a certain time of year, or a supplier has given you a great deal on a volume of items, and you think this is a great opportunity to pass some of those savings along to the customer and show that you care about his business, and you're still able to maintain your margins while also saving the customer some money. This is very popular in our industry, pulling the sales ahead of the season, and we see it quite often. Maybe it's oil, filter, diesel exhaust fluid, twine, bale wrap, cotton wrap, or specific parts, maybe tillage parts or hay parts, where you say we can move a high volume of parts ahead of the season. So first of all, we get paid ahead of the season, plus we're able to deliver it and get it into the farmer's hands so that we're not dealing with it during the hectic planting or haying or harvest seasons, because that's all already being delivered, and we pulled that customer out of the market. And we sacrificed a few margins, but it really takes the pressure off our parts department. So that can be a good time to discount. Another one is reducing aged inventory. So maybe you've got a bit of carryover of some tillage parts or some hay parts, where at the end of the season, maybe it's twine or filters, and you think, well, I'm not going to return these, but I could certainly use the cash. So why don't we look at ways that we can, move some of those items out, put them in the customer's hands, and offer a discount. And this can happen with obsolete or discontinued, or maybe even non-returnable items. You might think, well, my supplier won't take them back, but I have customers in my area that have machines that those parts fit. I'm going to contact them, offer them a bit of a deal, get them moved out, and turn some of that assets into cash, as well as freeing up some storage space. So that'd be a good time to discount. In a lot of cases, it's just increasing that volume. So maybe lost leaders, maybe you're trying to hit a certain volume target that actually puts you in a better buying position with your suppliers. So by offering a bit of a discount, you can push some of those sales into higher volume categories. But you need to be strategic and be thinking about that in a proactive way, right? And this is what I really want to touch. You're not, rather than reacting at the counter, giving a discount, you're being proactive to move things you want to move for the right reasons. So let's look at a few alternatives to discounting. So in our example, we've got some situations. First of all, one of them is do you have a marketing plan? And a lot of dealerships say, well, our supplier kind of tells us when we're going to have deals on certain times, or maybe there's order periods when we can buy a little better, whether it's twine or wrap or oil or filters. But really, have you got a marketing plan to know when those specials are coming? And so do you have monthly, quarterly, or seasonal specials? And do all your parts people know, okay, this month, we've got a special on harvest parts, or this month we've got a special on oil, or this month we have a special on twine. And making sure that when a customer comes in, maybe he comes in to buy oil, and you can say to that customer, hey, by the way, we've got a really great deal on twine right now, or on mesh wrap right now. Maybe you should take advantage of that and sign up to our special. And being a lot more proactive, rather than discounting when the customer says a discount, be proactive and say, hey, you want to save some money? Here's a deal I can offer you on maybe a product you didn't come in for today. you can still make that customer feel pretty important that you're thinking and you care about his business and trying to save him a few dollars. And then plan your discounts and specials around order periods. And again, I'll share an example. I was working with a group, and I came into the meeting 7:45 or so, and the three managers were sitting around and they were trying to put together their order because their supplier had a deadline coming up where they had to order so many tillage parts, disc blades and cultivator shovels and ground engaging tools for implements. And they were saying, well, we need to get to a certain volume level to get this deal. So we're trying to figure out how much we should order. And I just said, well, how much have you pre-sold? And they kind of all looked at me and said, well, really nothing. And I said, gee, this program, probably your supplier has offered this program every single year for 10 years. Why aren't you calling your customers and saying, hey, we've got a deal coming up on disc blades or cultivator shovels or ground opening tools for your planters? How many do you think you're going to need? Are you going to be doing an overhaul on your disc this fall? And a lot of customers would say, yeah, that's a good idea. If I can get a deal, I'll sign up for that. Well, after they kind of got their head around it, then they started to say, this really works well because now we know what to order because we have half of our order almost pre-sold. So we've taken away all that risk. Yes, we gave up a little bit of margin, but the risk is gone. They come in, we can get them delivered, and in some cases, we can get paid before we even have to pay our supplier. So that can have a huge impact on your business. So this is just a very simple spreadsheet. It can be done on a blank piece of paper or on a Excel spreadsheet. So down the left-hand side, you identify the items that you want to put a special on. Maybe it's oil filters, twine, wrap, tillage tools, perhaps harvest parts. And then across the top, you identify which months that you're going to put those specials on. You want to tie that to order periods from your suppliers, so you're getting discounts there. And you also want to tie it to either pre-season or post-season. So in this situation, maybe March and April is a good time to have a discount on twine and wrap. And then you have a post-season one in October and November where customers can pre-order for the next year and save some money and get that stuff all delivered over the winter. Maybe save them some freight or what have you, or maybe give them last year's pricing on next year's wrap by doing a pre-order. So it's just identifying when you're going to do that as part of your marketing plan. And then use these promotions. Again, I love the word proactive, to proactively contact customers. And a lot of parts departments in the past would say, oh, we run an ad or we send out a catalog and customers will come in and buy stuff. But how often are we really going after those customers with, say, a telephone blitz where we're contacting customers, right? And I use telephone blitz as a good one because quite often with our customer database, we can run a list and say, hey, we know how many of, model XYZ baler we have, or combine, or planter we have in our trade area. And we can call all those customers and say, hey, Mr. Customer, we're in an order period right now. I can save you a bunch of money if you want to pre-order these items. And you proactively contact them. And most customers will say, boy, I'm really glad you called. It shows you care. Even if they don't take advantage of that, they're a lot easier to deal with if they come in the middle of the season and say, hey, I need 100 new disc blades. And you're saying, ooh, boy, I haven't got all those in stock today. They're a lot easier to deal with, saying, I know I should have taken advantage when you called me, but I didn't bother, and now I need them. And they're not going to be asking for a discount when you in that situation, when you could have, especially when you pre-warned them. So it's being a lot more proactive. And today you can do the same thing by contacting them through email or social media blitzes. A lot of times we see now where they're texting customers and saying, this is the special this month. Give me a call and I'll place your order. Or this is what you bought last year. Are you going to need the same amount next year? And even target machine-specific promotions. Like I said, if you know how many of you have a high population of a certain model of machine, target those customers and say, we've got pickup teeth for all these rakes or what have you that you've sold in your trade area. Also, industry segment promotions can be great. So you can have maybe a dairy producer special or corn and soybean or planting season. So really looking at those certain segments of the industry to say we're going to run a special right now on hay parts for our dairy producers or something like that. And here's another one to remember. These promotions don't have to be discounts. They can be, you can get really customized with this. So it could be a situation where you order now and pay later. And you can tie that in with your suppliers. If your supplier is saying, this is the order period, it's 3 months long, you can call that customer and say, hey, if you order today, I can make sure they're here and you don't have to pay me, for 2 months. But I'll guarantee you get them in and I'll give you this discount. Well, a lot of customers say, well, that's a pretty good deal. If I don't have to pay right now and guaranteed supply, yeah, sign me up, right? So you don't always have to give a discount. Order now and guarantee price. So this can happen in your postseason where you're saying, you order now, I'll give you last year's price because we're anticipating a price increase. However, I'll make sure they're here for your next season of use. So the customer might take advantage of that. And a lot of you through that you have cards, whether it's through your supplier or your major suppliers, no interest or no payment plans where they can put it on the card and not have to pay for it. No interest, no payments for 6 months or 3 months or 12 months in some cases. So again, you're pulling those sales ahead. The customer is really saying, well, why wouldn't I order it? I mean, if I don't have to pay for it right away and I'm not getting charged interest, sure, I'll make sure I have those parts. So that's a really good opportunity. And in some cases, it could be free freight. Might be as simple as just saying, hey, Mr. Customer, you order them now, I can save you $400 in freight. And I'll bring that whole order in and you can pick them up next month. That might be enough for the customer to say, yeah, that's a good deal. We'll do that. So it's, again, these are all being proactive. Here's another one that we quite often talk about is really looking at alternatives. Some cases it might be broadening your product offerings or offering alternatives. And I use an example of a dealer I worked with not long ago. He sold a lot of air seeder hose, the big both 1 inch and the 3.5 inch or 4 inch hose. And he always ordered in the high quality stuff, but he was always fighting against a low cost supplier. So he decided that he would order in not only the high quality stuff, but a small sampling of the lower quality, cheaper brand. So by broadening that offering, when a customer came in and said, boy, that's expensive, they could say, well, we have this cheaper line. And here's the advantages. Yes, it's less money. However, this is the life expectancy of that compared to the higher quality stuff that's a little more money. So rather than giving a discount on this high quality end, he was saying to the customer, what's more important? And some customers might say, well, for my farm, actually, I can deal with that lower quality stuff. That's good enough. I don't put in a lot of acres. Good. You've kept a customer. Okay. Most major companies also offer, besides these alternative, is reman solutions, right? So some dealers have even created their own remanufacturing component solution. I've seen dealers, in fact, I was at one not long ago where they had knife drives for combine headers. Their supplier or their manufacturer didn't make a reman solution or remanufacture solution, so they did it themselves, where they had 4 or 5, they had them ready to go, rebuilt. If customer had a failure, they just said, here's a new knife drive, give me your core, we'll rebuild it, here's the price. So they actually were doing it right there. But many of you know, whether you're Case or CAD or Kubota, AGCO, New Holland, John Deere, there's lots of reman solutions out there. And unfortunately, we don't always do a good job of, first of all, telling the customer that we have that alternative, and second of all, stocking some of those alternatives. And this can be difficult, but it's a lot easier if you can look at your high volume, maybe it's starters or alternators or certain components where if you had some reman solutions, you could sell those, but you have to have them in stock, okay? And they can be a lower cost alternative without discounting. And also know what sets your parts apart. And this is a big one for training for your frontline parts people. So if you're selling a genuine part, and this could be oil, filters, twine, mesh, wrap, ground engaging tools, we all know that not all products are built the same. So really understand, make sure your frontline parts people know why your parts are less money or why they're more money, right? And you can offer aftermarket alternatives. And I'll give you some examples of people who are really good at this. fact, just before the webinar, I went on and I looked at companies like Tractor Supply. They're almost at $8 billion annual revenue in sales. Mills Farm and Fleet, over $1 billion. PVR, $56 million in Canada. Napa, almost $9 billion in parts they sell. And we know that they're not all ag parts, but when you look at the volume they do in oils and filters and hardware, a lot of it is the stuff that we sell in dealerships, and these suppliers are eating our lunch. So sometimes we need to know, okay, how do we compete against them if we have a genuine part that's of higher quality, or can we source a lower cost solution for that customer to make sure he's buying that from us rather than going across the street to a Tractor Supply or a PV Mart or a Napa, and making sure your parts people can explain the difference between the quality or the wear factors of those different parts. So you really need to train your frontline staff on not only on the product, but here's another one is, what do you say to a customer when they're asked for a discount? What do you say? How do you handle the most common requests for discounts? So maybe you're finding a pattern, say, oh, customers are always asking for a deal on our filters. They're always asking for a deal on our twine because we're more expensive than the guy down the road. So what do you say to that customer? Well, if the answer is, well, I don't know, I just give them a discount. Well, that's not good enough. Maybe it's a chance to say, all right, we're going to have a little huddle here, and we're going to decide how we handle this. How do we work with these customers and really do a better job of selling our product or explaining the difference between our product. And review these situations that arise and discount the alternative. So I'm going to share a little story. We actually did a seminar with some parts people at a dealership, and we finished up in the afternoon or late in the afternoon. I came back the next morning to pack up all our after our class. And one of the parts people came to me and said, you won't believe it, Kelly. The very first customer came in, asked for a part. I put it on the counter, and he asked me for a discount. And I said, so what did you say? And he said, I gave it to him. I gave him the discount. And I said, well, what did you learn from that? And he said, well, actually what happened was, as soon as that happened, I went down and I sat in my parts manager's office and I said, what could I have done there? What possibility, what could I have said to that customer that rather than just saying, nope, no discount, or yeah, okay, you want 10% off, here's 10% off. And the whole point I'm making there is just the fact that he asked the question, what could I do? And he reviewed that situation, and his parts manager said, well, here's 2 or 3 things we could have done for that customer. And maybe we wouldn't have had to give away the discount, or maybe we wouldn't have had to give away as much. Or next time that happens, here's something you could say that would keep that customer happy without giving a discount. So it's really working with your frontline staff and knowing the impact it has. And I call this turning a no into a yes. Nobody wants to say no to a customer. Hey, can I have a deal? Nope, that's the price. Right? It doesn't sound very positive. So how can you turn that into a yes and still make that customer feel good about the fact that he's coming and asked for a deal? So here's a few examples that have come from dealers. One is a good question to ask is, what's the customer willing to do to get a discount? So here's a couple of examples. Maybe it's volume or package buy. So the customer's, he's buying a jug of oil or a pail of oil or maybe a set of filters. And he says, I want a deal on that. Can you give me a better deal? Rather than saying no, say, I may be able to give you a volume discount if you'll take a case of those filters. Or maybe if you take a pallet of net wrap, I can probably sharpen my pencil here a little bit. How does that sound to you? And you'd be surprised how customer might say, no, actually that's fine. I really only need the one. Or they might say, well, gee, yeah, if you can give me a bit of a deal, I will take a whole pallet of them. Well, now you're getting somewhere and you've turned a no into a yes. Perhaps it's payment options, right? If you're willing to pay cash versus charge, I may be able to save you some money. Again, this isn't going to happen on everything, but you might have a really high ticket part. The customer saying, man, this is a $1,000 part. Can you give me a deal, right? And a lot of dealerships know if the customer puts it on their charge account, they may not, you don't see that money until he pays at the end of the month. In some cases, it might be 30, 60, 90 days before you actually see the money, right? So just by asking the question, saying, well, if you're willing to pay cash or write me a check today, I might be able to save you a little bit of money on that part, right? The customer might say, sure, I'm willing to do that. And you really haven't lost anything. And a lot of credit card companies charge the dealership, 2.5%, 3%, just for the courtesy of using their card. So you say, well, I can put it on your card at the price and you won't have to pay for it until you get that statement in 30 days. However, I might be able to knock $100 off if you write me a check today. The customer might say, yeah, that's fair. So you've turned no into a yes. Or alternatively, like I just mentioned, if you put it on your card, that would give you 30 days interest free. Would that be helpful for you, sir or ma'am? So that really works out in a situation where the customer's not just a discount. They're saying, well, yeah, at least you've tried to save me some money. Yeah, I'll put it on the card and then I won't have to pay for it till I get some crop in the bin or I get some hay harvested or what have you. That might be beneficial to the customer. Is the customer willing to wait, right? So I may better get you a better price on this if you're willing to wait until our seasonal order period. Do you need those parts today, sir? That might be a situation if the customer's saying, yeah, actually I didn't. If you've got a sale coming up, yeah, order them all and I'll take them under that sale package. In fact, I'll even take a few more if you can give me a bit of a deal. So again, you're increasing the volume, you're putting into an order program, so you've turned a no into a yes. Here's another one that we miss all the time. And I ask this question when I go into dealerships. I'll say, do you know what the warranty is on a part that I buy over the counter? And it's astounding to me how many frontline parts people say, I don't know. I've never been asked that question before. Okay, so it may be a situation where the supplier offers a 90-day warranty on those parts, right? And the customer's saying, can you do any better? Well, perhaps that answer is, well, actually we have a 90-day warranty, but if you get us to install it, we actually offer a 6-month warranty, plus it's on parts and labor, not just the part. Now, maybe that's a company policy, maybe your supplier has that sort of an option for you, but that customer you're showing that customer value without discounting, where they might say, actually, yeah, I think I will get you to do it because I see value in having a parts and labor warranty, plus the fact I don't have to install it myself. And that can really shine through, especially on electronic components, right? Where there's no warranty on electronic component unless you install it as a dealer. That might be huge value to that customer. If he plugs it in wrong and fries an electronic component and there's no warranty, that might have huge value to have you do it. Or, like I mentioned earlier, if you've got alternative suppliers on low-cost items, and this really works well for foil filters and twine and things like that, where you can say, and the customer says, can you give me a better price? I say, well, we actually have access to another supplier, and we can order similar parts, and the price will be lower. However, I should probably show you the comparison of the quality versus the potential savings, right? So maybe it doesn't last as long, maybe it doesn't wear as well, maybe it doesn't fit as well as a genuine part does. But hey, Mr. Customer, if it's going on an old tractor or something you don't use very often, maybe you're okay with that, and you can say, I can save you a little bit of money. So you're really not discounting, you're actually just offering them a lower cost alternative, okay? And in some cases, you may even have 3 solutions. So you might have your genuine original equipment manufacturer part. You may have a remanufactured, depending on your supplier, and also a lower cost supplier that offers discount parts, right? So you can say to the customer, hey, I've got this part, it's $400. I've got a reman solution that's $325, and here's the pros and cons to it. And I've also got an aftermarket one from a different supplier, and it's only $300. So out of those, which one do you think will suit your needs? And it's showing the customer you care about his operation. But again, in all those, you aren't necessarily discounting. You're just offering some savings to the customer, and let him choose or let her choose what's a better alternative for that particular application they have. Here's another one. Do you have to discount to match competitors, right? And really, you need to train your frontline people on the advantages and the value your products offer in comparison to other offerings, okay? And this is really important, especially, and we're going to talk about this in a second, around the internet, the people that are shopping online, right? So availability. I mean, if you've got that part, you can say, here it is, your machine's down, Mr. Customer, I've got that part, bang, it's ready for you. So you're offering the convenience and able to get them up and running because you have that right now, okay? Again, I just mentioned, maybe there's no warranty on a third-party part. Maybe it's limited warranty, or perhaps it's an extended warranty on parts and labor if your technicians are installing it. So you can show the difference and the value that might bring to that customer. What about your exchange and return policies, right? Or maybe you've got an alternative. Say, look, I've got a new starter, I've got this aftermarket one. I'll invoice them both to you. You take them home, bring one back if you're happy with the way this one went on. As long as it's still in the original packaging, I'll give you full credit for it. So you're showing that customer an alternative or an exchange or return option that may show them the value rather than discounting price. And make sure your parts people are aware of the specifications. We see this on so many things, right? It could be an oil. Maybe some oils, or have a longer change interval, or the filter is a better quality so that the customer can run longer. Or maybe you're selling filters that work well on truck engines, but aren't really suited for a heavy duty application in a dusty farm situation on a tractor engine. And showing them the difference to say, here's why the price is different on this, and this is why we recommend the specifications for your application. Like oils, filters, right? And they're designed for your unique conditions. The quality, maybe it's around the long life or extended life. And we certainly see this in tillage tools where, you can get a real discount on certain items, and then you find that they don't last any time at all. Where a high quality one might get 3 times the life out of it. So it can make a big difference, but your frontline people need to know that. If they're just saying, oh, gee, yeah, we're always too expensive, then they're going to get clobbered at the counter. High wear items, and this is another one, will fit. So your genuine OEM parts, pretty confident that when he takes it home or she takes it home, it's going to bolt right on to where they need it. Where maybe in a lower cost alternative that they're looking at from another supplier, you may have some knowledge to say, well, it doesn't really fit, or the paint doesn't really match. Are you sure you want that on your machine? And in some cases, they might say, yeah, good enough. It's an old Pelter. I don't care. Or they might say, actually, no, I rely on that machine. I'm not going to take the chance. Okay. And has the manufacturer approved that use of that part on that machine? So it could be a safety issue. It may void their warranty. There could be lots of reasons. But if your frontline people aren't aware of it, they can bring that to the attention of the customer. Here's another one. I threw this one in around discounting because we know that these are real competitors, Amazon, Google. And I got this actually from a fella from Saskatchewan that mentioned to me, he was looking at this from a farming, precision farming thing. And he asked the question, are we better than Google? And I thought that's a great question to ask. So competition from the internet comes in many forms. So let's look at Amazon. And yes, they're convenient. They're open 24/7. You can shop, you can compare, you can order online. They've got published return policies. They've got a lot of things going for them. And you might think, wow, how do we take on a giant like Amazon, right? Or Google, right? You can actually Google something, right? You get multiple sources. They can shop, they can compare, they can get advice. They may even get how-to videos on how to install it. How are you going to compete against that? And again, YouTube, same thing, right? YouTube might have videos on certain products or parts and how to install it, set and adjust. And you're thinking, well, I can't compete with that. My little dealership or my parts department, I can't hold a candle to what those big giants can do. However, I challenge you to think about what can you do that they can't do? Okay. What can't Amazon do? Can they provide the information based on your knowledge of your specific region? No, I don't think they can do that. You know how those machines are being used in your region and why you recommend a specific part for that application for the customer. You might even know the customer's operation really well and say, hey, I know your farm, or I know how you use this machine. And this lower cost alternative, you will not be happy with it, sir. So this is why we're recommending this higher wear item, right? Predictive stocking, right? If they ordered online, it's going to be at best next morning, right? Maybe same day, but they're waiting for a day to get that part. Whereas you can predict stocking levels and needs of customers in your area, so you have it available even before they need it. Where you can contact customers and say, hey, we've got a special on this twine or whatever. Before you need it, I've already ramped up my stock. Of course, over-the-counter delivery versus ordering and wait, over-the-counter return and exchange policies, that's a lot more convenient than shipping it back. And this is a big one. Amazon, YouTube, or Google can't install it. You can. Your dealership has full control, and you can offer that installation. And quite often, in most cases, we know most dealerships are going to stand behind that installation. So if it fails or isn't put on properly, you're going to have that customer's back to say, hey, we goofed, we made a mistake, we're going to make sure we get this right for you. And in some cases, that comes with an extended or enhanced warranty on the parts that you install versus the ones they've ordered online and installed them themselves. And then the last thing that is the other tangibles, such as community or local involvement. A lot of your dealerships are very involved in FFA or 4-H or a lot of community things, and making sure the customers are aware of what kind of a corporate citizen your dealership is or community citizen you are. So that brings us sort of to the end of the presentation. So I'm just going to review quickly again. We know that customers want a deal. We know discounting happens every day. We know that your frontline people, they are, like we said, they're at the front line. They're at the firing line taking those bullets. And so we need to make sure that we've armed them in all possible ways to deal with that customer in a professional way and to turn a no into a yes and make that customer feel valued, and yet still protect the dealership, because those margin dollars is what keeps the place afloat. And really, that's the dollars that get reinvested so you have the right parts for that customer the next time they come in. So it comes full circle. I think we have a better understanding of the impact discounting has on your profitability, understand the difference between good discounting and bad discounting. We've shared some alternatives to discounting, and in an hour or less than an hour, we don't have time to come up with all the solutions, but I think we gave you a picture of some alternatives that might work for you and some ideas to make it easier for your parts people to deal with those special requests. So hopefully we've thrown out a few ideas there. So with that, I guess, Sierra, I'll turn it back to you. And if there's any questions, I'll do my best to answer them.
Thanks, Kelly. We do have a couple. So the first one, you have a slide on there that mentions parts counter people not being trained properly. So what are your top 3 areas of training for parts people?
That's a great question. So I think especially with the larger dealerships, you have 2-3 parts people, you probably have situations where somebody's really strong on product, someone's really strong on dealing with customers. And in some cases, we have new parts people that just say, I don't know the machines. I don't understand how our customers use this machine, or I'm not really sure what it does. And so you need to take a team effort at that and come up with ways to say on a regular basis, it could be once a month, and say, hey, we're going to do a quick 20-minute session. We're going to do a walk around a baler or a walk around a planter and point out the high wear items. And same thing on parts, to say, we're going to show you the difference between our oil and a competitor's oil, or our filter and a competitive filter. So there's lots of ways to do it. The point of it is that quite often that knowledge is in your business already. You probably have a veteran parts person that says, that knows certain parts inside and out. Well, you got to use that. You got to really tap into that experience and spread that to your other people. You might have another parts person that just has such good luck at not giving discounts because of the way they communicate. Well, have a little training session. Hey, how do you do that? Like, what questions do you ask? You don't seem to get asked for discounts, or you seem to be able to answer those questions better than our new parts person. Well, let's have a little training session on that. So hopefully that answers the question. It really needs to be a customized approach of what the problem is and where the opportunity is to make it better.
All right. Got another one that just popped up. What is the cost savings for the farmer if a remain is offered versus they build it themselves or they have the dealer rebuild
Well, it depends a bit on the supplier, but in most cases, a reman solution is less money. And I know lots of manufacturers, in order to promote it, they'll, first of all, you can sell them the reman and you take their core back. So the customer, you might buy a starter for $1,000 and you can say, well, hey, I'll give you $200 for your old one. So automatically they're saving $200 and you send that core in to be rebuilt. And a lot of reman suppliers actually offer as good or even a better warranty on remanufactured parts than they do on the original equipment. And they do that to try and entice customers to use a remanufactured solution rather than new parts. And so you have to price and compare. Not all reman solutions, suit all customers, but I think there's a lot of remanufacturers out there, whether it's especially electronic starters, alternators, turbochargers, oil coolers. There's lots of suppliers out there that do a fantastic job at offering reman solutions. And just about every major manufacturer has some sort of a link to a remanufactured supplier.
Okay. Another question we've got is, how do you get people comfortable turning a no into a yes?
I think that takes ongoing coaching. And the way I see that, what I've seen works the best is, first of all, you plant some seeds of how could you handle that situation. And as a manager, part of your job is to be a coach, right? So if you see a parts person that's really getting hammered over discounting, after that situation happens, you can take them aside and say, how do you think we could have handled that? How could we have handled that better? And it's incredible how just by asking that question, the parts person might say, I don't know. I didn't know what to say. Well, here's a couple of suggestions. Next time you get asked that, ask them, where are you comparing that part from, or where are you getting that other price from, or do you need this part immediately, or are you willing to wait for a week? And it's amazing how just by doing a little bit of discovery with that customer, they'll quite often tell you. But it's an ongoing coaching. I think the only answer there is ongoing. And I think in most dealerships, they see that happening all the time. And it's a manager's role, and even other coworkers, to say, hey, I can help you out. Let's identify what happened in that situation. It's just like practicing for a game, right? You don't make a mistake in a game and then say, well, I'm not going to practice how to do it better. I'm just going to go out and make the same mistake again. You say, no, I'm going to take that back. I'm going to practice how I could have done that better. So the next time, the game's on, I'm better prepared.
Okay. We just had another one. Is it better to not make the sale versus giving the discount?
Oh, that's a tough one. I think that's a pretty tough question. I think in most cases we want to try and make the deal. I think most dealerships will say, look, we really don't want to turn that customer away. And I think that's why we tend to give discounts. But I do believe, I would say, I guess as a former owner, I never wanted to lose a deal of a dealership. I never wanted to lose a deal. However, I think the trick is to learn from it. If you're thinking, man, we just gave away the farm to make that deal, was that a good decision? And how can we stop that from happening the next time? Or come up with a better solution where we don't have to give away as much. And so I would say probably no. I mean, there is a time, I suppose, in everybody's situation where you have to say, I'm sorry, that other supplier is discounting to the point where I just can't compete. Good luck with it. Maybe it's old age inventory, what have you, and you have to bite the bullet. But I think you try and make the deal as best you can, and then learn so that the next time it happens, you're better prepared.
Okay. That's all the questions we have. And before I wrap up, Kelly, you had another slide you wanted to share?
Oh, I just wanted to share this. Thanks very much. We've got some upcoming training for frontline parts and service people coming up this fall. We've got a couple of sessions in the Pacific Northwest. We've got a couple in Texas. We've got some upcoming ones in the winter across Western Canada and through the Midwest. And these are one-day programs designed specifically for those frontline people, those parts counter people, service counter people, service writers, service administrators, even technicians that are quite often in the face of customers, dealing with customers. So they're all one day, 6 or 7 hours. So you can come in the morning, take the training, still get home at night. We've priced it very competitively so you can send your people, and we've had a terrific response. So I've got the website up there, dealerinstitute.org. Have a look at some of the courses that are available for, one of them is called Parts Counter Sales Training, the other is called Service Counter Sales Training. And we've had terrific response. If you've enjoyed the session today, this is just one little segment that's been taken out of that program. And like I said, our response last year was fantastic. So we've made some modifications to it. And so if people want to sign up, they can go there and go to our website at Western Equipment Dealer Association or dealerinstitute.org, and they can register right online. So thanks for that.
Thank you, Kelly. That's all the time we have today. Today's presentation and audio will be made available on the Farm Equipment website in the event you'd like to go back and review it. Watch your email in the Farm Equipment newsletter for more information. On behalf of Kelly, the Western Equipment Dealers Association, and the Farm Equipment staff, thank you for joining us for today's webinar. When you leave the webinar, you will be directed to a short survey. Please feel free to reach out to let us know what you thought of the live event and if there are any topics you'd like us to cover in future webinars. Thanks again, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day.